Day in the life of a business analyst. Once again, I'm Josh Petavello. Currently work at KORTX, based here in Berkeley, Michigan. So I want to start with who this presentation is for, right? So this is going to be for someone who might be interested in becoming an analyst. Maybe you've seen open job roles, heard about it, in school, or just heard about, data and interested in more of that. Those may be unsure of the field and just want to learn more, just out of that curiosity aspect there. Or those who might be thinking about a career change in the ever-growing data and business analyst field. That's what we're going to be covering today. It's not going to be so much of a technical deep dive into, statistical or analytical things or tools. But if you ever have questions and you want to reach me, maybe offline after this, I'll include my email towards the end, and you feel free to reach out to me, shoot me a message, and I'd love to talk to you more on any topic after that. So just to go over the outline here of what we'll be talking about for today is overall, like, what is the role of a business analyst, in 2023? What does that look like? A day in the life, what you might be doing if you are an analyst, and is it by no means will it be an exclusive list, as you'll see here. Some of the key challenges faced in the role and what we can do to overcome those. Tools and techniques used, and again, it won't be an exclusive list, just some of the things I've used, and if you're interested in becoming an analyst, maybe some tools that you can look at and start to become familiar with if you're interested. And then an overall career development path for anyone who might be interested in becoming a business analyst. But first, I'd like to mix things up and start with an icebreaker, totally unrelated to anything data whatsoever. But just like to ask, what's your current favorite go-to show? Or in other words, what should I put on my my watch list next? Feel free to just jump in, unmute yourself, and let me know if there's any good shows. I'll go. I've been watching recently on Netflix. It's a show called I Think You Should Leave. It's like a chaotic kind of sketch comedy. If anyone's familiar with Tim Robinson, definitely highly recommend if that's what you're interested in. Ted Lasso. Okay, Ted Lasso. I've heard about Ted Lasso. Haven't actually watched it. I know. Righteous Gemstones. Oh, good choice. Yep, good choice. Stanley Cup Finals.
But I went too fast. I really meant to say Jury Duty. That's actually probably my favorite one right now.
Ooh, we just finished that. That was a wild ride. It's a wild ride, Jury Duty. Highly recommend. I think that was on Amazon, right? Or I think Freevee.
Yeah, it's on Prime. I think it was on Prime. It was
Prime,
so
okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, but yeah, Ted Lasso, and Righteous Gemstones. Okay, we'll add that to the list. Awesome. Thanks. Cool, fun stuff. Yeah, like I said, nothing data whatsoever. But go into a little bit of actually, who am I, right? So again, I'm Josh Petavello. Graduated from U of M in 2016. Which is crazy to say. It's been almost 10 years now since that happened. My current role here at KORTX, I'm a senior digital marketing data analyst. So really what I am, it's like a data analyst, and I'm more specifically dealing with, the digital marketing aspect of things, which I'll dive into a little bit here later. My background, I've been working in the digital marketing industry for, going on 10 years, and this might date me a little bit. I started off in advertising. Now everything you get, like digital, certificates, right? You can screenshot it. Back in the day with Google, when it was called AdWords, they used to send you these actual physical certificates in the mail for free if you actually did it. So yeah, that's 2015 on there. So I've been in it for a while, and I still hang this up because I think it's fun just to look at. They used to do that. It used to be kind of nice, and now they just give you a screenshot. But started in advertising, back before digital marketing really became what it was, and it was like social media advertising. I didn't really love it. I switched over to SEO, or search engine optimization, and the majority of my career was spent there, working on organic marketing and a lot of reporting. And once I started to dig into the reporting aspect of things, I started to scratch this itch in my brain and really want to go more into data analysis and analytics. So then I switched over to that role, and now where I'm currently at here at KORTX. Outside of work, I enjoy all things marketing, cooking, being Italian, that's part of who I am, music and video games. So you might be asking yourself, okay, well, why data analysis? Maybe why now? And it sounds, I guess a little cliche, but data really has never been more important. You're going to be hard pressed these days to find a company or corporation who's going to say data is not important to our operations. Like, of course it is. Data collection is growing with every app that we use and everything else. Companies are using that data to make more informed decisions every day. So much so, that back in 2021, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics predicted that for the next, well, now 8 years, but it was 10 years then, the growth rate for data analytics jobs would be about 23%. That was much higher than the average of 5% for other industries. So companies are really investing in data analytics. They're investing in analysts, investing in people who are, being able to turn data around into actual tangible results for business outcomes. So it couldn't be a better time to join. It's been great for me. There's a lot of resources out there. And just being like overall, if you're interested in joining, data analysis, another part of the role is being able to provide support across different industries, right? Or different even like functions between businesses, right? So on any given day, working as an analyst, you might talk to different teams like sales and marketing and finance, or internal and external conversations. Like for me, like I might talk to my clients or someone in sales or our account managers to, come up with a report or whatever. So if you're interested in that and providing support across the different industries, it's a great field for you. Another one of those, if you have like an analytical mindset or you like to, solve problems or, like I like to play games, right? Board games, video games, and being an analyst, it really kind of feeds into that like problem solving aspect, right? You're able to solve problems maybe that others can't, or they don't have the time to do, so it's anything from like talking about, identifying trends within marketing, right? Customer behaviors, uncovering patterns, and then how do we save money, et cetera. Yeah, it's great. And then from just a variety of roles and responsibilities, so being an analyst, especially if you work as like a consultant or at an agency, you're going to touch a bunch of different industries and technologies, and it really gives you just a ton of opportunities to learn, to grow, to advance yourself as a person, learn, how the world works. Like personally, throughout my career, I've worked on small, mom and pop shops all the way to international e-commerce sites and everything in between. And I've learned a lot just from being an analyst and building out reports and talking to people. So if you're interested in that at all, this would be a great field for you. So what does the role of an analyst actually look like? Say if you were to look at, a job listing of a data analyst, business analyst, et cetera, which we'll call like our standard analyst role for now. What might be required of you and for that job, right? So analysis and problem solving, like I mentioned, it's a good aspect of the job, but that's going to be a requirement wherever you go. Being an analyst, you're going to be relied upon a lot for different people saying, hey, can you figure this out? Or can you answer this question I have? And there's no other reports or anything to do that. So it's on you to figure that out and answer it and then provide conclusions. Process management, internal and external. So that's going to be very much someone saying, hey, we have this process, we need to improve things, we are slacking, or hey, everyone on our team has some sort of different report they're using and it takes twice as long to have our monthly check-ins. Can you come up with a better solution for that? Things like that. Or clients coming to you and saying, hey, we have no idea how our marketing channels are doing. Can you help us out with that? Things like that. And being able to receive that ask and then say, great, and then come up with a solution and help overall processes improve. That's going to be part of the role. Another part is data collection and extraction. So, working as an analyst, you're going to be given a lot of data, and it might be anything from a giant spreadsheet of data to someone saying, hey, here's our data warehouse. Here's the credentials. We need you to go in there and build a report for us. So it's collecting all the data you need and then extracting it and then building out either reports right here or dashboards for the creation from that data. So how do we get our data? Where do we do with it? And then how do we build out reports and dashboards? And you're going to hear me say this probably a couple of times, but it's like building a dashboard and report, and really like being an analyst, you're going to want to tell the story with the data. That's another one of those like cliche sayings, but everybody says it in the field, and you're going to hate hearing it probably, but that's really essentially being an analyst. That's going to be part of your job, is telling a story. You're going to be able to build a report or dashboard that's going to then inform some higher up or some stakeholder about, hey, here's the data, here's what we think you should do, here you go. Another part of the job is data validation and quality assurance. So this is part of probably the more, I guess, not boring, but it's more of the tedious but must be done part of the role, right? It's like, hey, someone needs to QA this data. A client gives you a big spreadsheet, we call it cleaning the data, right? Or they give you an access to their API. And we need to make sure that that data is clean, right? We can't use it in reports if it's messy. We need to maybe reformat things, et cetera. Things that you'll learn throughout the job, and looking at data in the wrong ways and then cleaning it up and all that fun stuff. And then another part of the role as an analyst, especially, in today's age, is continuous learning and skill development. So this is huge. This is kind of how I've built my career, how others I know have built their careers. It's just always learning things. That everything with technology is always changing, from day to day, even hour to hour. Tools are being updated or they're being outdated. Oh, and there's new processes, there's new coding languages, all these things that are happening. And it's on you to learn that to stay ahead of the technology or not. There's a lot, and I'll cover, some of the resources I've used, but there's just a lot of continuous learning and development options out there for you at your fingertips. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in that, to always be on that path for learning. So now another icebreaker that I love asking questions. A little more specific here. So what brought you here today? Maybe what were you hoping to get out of this? Maybe just some curiosity, maybe some questions you had, et cetera. But yeah, if you want to drop it in the chat or just jump in, and talk to me. But yeah, what brought you here today? Good chance for me to sip my tea too. General curiosity. Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a good one, because a lot of people, even other, from one analyst to another, there's a lot of curiosity as to like, what do you do? Exactly, role entails. Great. Thanks, Lori. I appreciate that. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, interested in learning how you gather requirements, make process flows you found to be most useful. Cool. Yeah, that's a good one. And I'll kind of go into a little bit of that. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the chat. Awesome. Understanding different roles analysts play in the market. Cool. Great. Yeah, I'll go into some of that too. And happy to chat about that. Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, Annie, hopefully, if you're interested in switching over to the analyst route, I can help you out with that. Cool. That sounds good. Yeah, great stuff here. A question from Robin. So analysts responsible for conducting surveys. It depends. I've done surveys before, more on like the marketing research side of things. I've worked with teams, not necessarily myself responsible for conducting surveys. That's kind of, we've analyzed the results from, said surveys, but I've done surveys before. It kind of just depends, a lot of that depends on the role where you're at. If you're just like a general, maybe business analyst, or if you're in a more marketing analyst role, you might be doing some surveys either for your clients, or if you're working at an in-house gig, you might be doing some of those as well. Correct. Yeah. So that's my own personal experience around that. So more on the back end with the data as opposed to the front end in design of the surveys. I've done, back in more I'd say traditional marketing roles. I've done surveys before, but yeah, just being on the analyst side of things, you're probably going to be more analyzing the data, the results, and then taking said results to whoever the stakeholder might be and said, hey, based on the survey, we need to maybe be teaching everyone this new thing or whatever, right? The results of your survey. Hopefully that helps. Hope I can get to all these questions too. Oh, Kevin, curious and wondering what educational background you had to pursue this career. That's a great one, Kevin. Honestly, I started out, my degree is it's digital marketing, and I did that for a while, but really I just found out through digital marketing, through reporting to clients, over the years of being in an agency type role, reporting things and starting building out dashboards got me curious on how do we, use data better. And I started learning more and more about dashboard building. I started watching some videos on SQL or SQL, and learning a little more about just that side of the house, and being able to then watch even some YouTube videos and kind of turn it into a career. Cool. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to move this back down and we'll keep going. Cool. So I think there's a question kind of around this of like what types of business analysts are out there, right? So, you know, when we say that the term data analyst or business analyst, it's kind of, oh, unless you really specify up to interpretation, right? So we'll say like the standard data or business analyst, right, would be your, you know, if you're either entry level and you're getting out of college, or you're maybe switching careers to something different, you know, business analyst or data analyst might be right for you. And that's going to be the role that we primarily talk about today, the person who's going to be responsible for everything from gathering the data, you know, maybe either building out a report or dashboard, then presenting it perhaps, gathering insights, and then talking to specific teams and stakeholders to figure out, you know, what's the best approach, right? You know, I'd say then if you want to move up from there, you know, we have roles that are more of like the data engineer, where this is not so much, you know, maybe client or stakeholder facing, more behind the scenes, taking a bunch of data and creating either tables or models out of the data rather than just reporting and presenting on it. This might be a role where, you know, your analyst goes to the engineer and says, hey, here's a bunch of spreadsheets, or I don't know what any of this means, or this data needs to be cleaned up. Can you help? So the engineer will then use more coding heavy stuff to create different tables and then format the data in a nicer way, then give it back to the analyst and say, here you go, here's what you need to report on. And then, you know, the analyst will take it, create dashboards, and then present from there. The data scientist route is another route where you have definitely coding heavy. And this is where someone would learn different languages, like you might have heard of, like, you know, Python or R, different languages like that that can help you build models from the data. So this would be then building out, you know, predictability and trends, right, from the data that you're seeing, you know. So definitely more coding heavy, more behind the scenes, and then using this data to then give back to an analyst or report on yourself and say, hey, here's what we're noticing. This is maybe a new emerging trend that we should, you know, put some resources towards, et cetera. So if you are, you know, coding minded and you enjoy getting in the weeds of things, you know, I'd say go for the engineer and the data scientist route. There's also, excuse me, more specific routes within, you know, say if you want to be a business analyst, but you want to maybe perhaps double down into the industry that you're interested in, right? So for myself, you know, I'm a marketing analyst. So I do, you know, everything that the business analyst does, but that's primarily around marketing or digital marketing metrics, you know. So a lot of what I'm doing is working with clients, you know, and their marketing efforts, right? So it might be someone saying, hey, we're running a bunch of advertising campaigns. Can you build out a quarterly report and then tell us what's working, what's not? Or, hey, we have our 5 different marketing channels that we're running. Can you build us a dashboard and give us the insights, you know? So primarily around like your marketing and the analytics for there versus just like overall other business data that you might go into. A risk analyst, you know, is another analyst who's primarily focused on gathering the data for a business. Larger corporations might have roles like this where you're looking at everything and looking at then, you know, the risks involved. So you might be looking at predictability and trends for in either like acquiring a new business, right? Or allocating resources to, you know, maybe like a different country or something, like looking at the risks associated, giving all of those risks to higher up and then helping them either make a decision or giving them all the info they need. And then a financial analyst, you know, for those of you who might be interested in getting into, you know, any sort of like economy-based roles, right? You're going to look at the finances. You're going to look at like, hey, trends in the market. If you like the changing market, you know, the financial market has, this might be the role for you. So putting portfolios together, looking at the trends, and also like pulling in some risks, and then giving that to clients or giving that to your higher ups is something that type of analyst role might be good for. So if we want to focus on primarily like what I'd probably call the standard role is like your data analyst, right? If you wanted to go into a role and if you were going to an interview, right? Or if you were to say, Josh, what do you think would be required of me to start a job here? I'd say, well, first and foremost, again, having that analytical mindset. You like solving problems because that's going to be either a question that you're going to be outright asked on an interview, or they're going to say within the job requirements, you have an analytical mindset. Every time you're going to see that, you know, because that's really what companies want. They want you to, for lack of a better term, think outside the box, right? They want you to solve the problems that others can't or they don't have the time for. They're also going to have some requirement for you to visualize the data. So there's a lot of different tools, and I'll show you one specifically later, this Looker Studio tool. But companies are going to want you to be able to visualize the data and tell that story. That is going to be something huge. There's a lot of tools that offer that, and you can pull in data relatively quickly, tell a story, and be able to visualize it in a way that makes sense. Because a lot of times, as an analyst, you're going to be presenting a lot of data that takes you a lot of time to pull together, visualize, and you might be presenting to someone, and you might have 5 minutes to present your story, or 30 seconds, right? With someone's attention span. So how do you take all that data, visualize in a way that's captivating, makes sense, and then ultimately can help inform better business decisions? This is definitely not, I think, like a hard requirement, but understanding how data warehouses work, how data management works. So if you might have heard like SQL or Google's platform BigQuery, knowing what these things are and how they work, and then ultimately learning like how to pull data from them is going to give you a huge advantage, especially if you're going in to become a data analyst. Knowing that versus like learning that maybe later on after the fact. There's great YouTube videos and resources out there around these things, courses you can take to teach you just the overall basics, to enough to get to make you dangerous. Data cleaning and processing, or even some like QA stuff. So that's going to be a requirement. A lot of companies are going to say, hey, here's our data, you might need to clean it up, or you get something from a client. Here's my giant Excel spreadsheet. Before we even analyze it, we're going to have to take a look and see what's going on. Having an agile mindset. So really, like, especially working in any sort of technical field, the only constant we have is change. Things are changing all the time, and being able to go with the flow, as they say, is going to help you out, because a lot of times in any industry, excuse me, but especially when you're working as like an analyst and you have different stakeholders, projects get pushed back, or your client contact might quit and you have to start over with someone else. Being able to ride the waves, or resources might change, or something else happens. So being able to have that mindset is going to put you ahead of the game, and being able to just, be agile is going to be huge for this industry. Light to medium coding is definitely a plus, so even if you just learn the basics of SQL, it's going to give you that edge for others who might, not know it, especially if you're going to a data analyst role. Again, I can give you some recommendations on like where to start for that, but learning enough of that, you're not going to have to be, SQL master or like a Python master, but understanding what these tools can do, and maybe either learning in your own time or finding some tools that can help with that is definitely going to help. And then strong communication skills. So this one is definitely important because, as an analyst, you're going to be required to talk to a lot of different people, depending on your role, and having strong communication skills to back up, the data that you provide is going to be huge, because you're going to be essentially selling whatever decisions that you're making to whoever those stakeholders are. And when most people think of an analyst, right, they might think of someone who likes to work behind the scenes and doesn't like to be, super client heavy or client focused. But if you can find the line of strong client communication and having the behind the scenes skills, you're going to be a prime candidate. That's what I've heard. That's the people, my colleagues I've seen who really excel. They can kind of walk, a foot in both worlds there. So hopefully that makes sense. And this is kind of an icebreaker, but kind of maybe like a not homework, but something for you to maybe take a look at, in some off time. But what this is here, it's pulling up. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the 16 personalities, the personality test. And if you are, and if you know your personality type, feel free to drop it in the chat, or if you've done something similar. When I went through school back in the day, we did something similar to this, where we took a test, we found out what our personality type was, and then that kind of helped for those people like myself who didn't really know, like, what career choice can I go into. Taking a test like this can kind of help shed a little light, So for anyone who's not familiar, the 16 personalities, it gives you a 4-letter acronym here that kind of breaks out what your personality type is. So for here, you can see this is from Dice Analytics, but it says some of the best personality types for analyst roles are some of those who first have the NTs, which is heavy in the intuition-based and thinking-based personalities. That's really great, for these type of roles. So I actually took mine. I took it back in the day, and I also took mine. Okay. Nice. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So you guys are familiar. Cool. So you can see here that some of the ones here that have, if you have any intuition base and even some thinking base, those are really going to be good roles. Not saying if you don't have it, you can't be an analyst, but it definitely helps. And again, this is, take it with all a grain of salt. But I took the test last week. I was just curious if my answer had changed since I took it, a couple of years ago. It hadn't. I'm still the architect, which is the INTJ. Which you can see actually here's the first one here. So that was some good confirmation to say, wow, maybe I am in the right field. Maybe I'm doing the right things here. So I would encourage you, if you haven't taken this, again, it's 16personalities.com, and with the slides here, there's also, like you can see before I'll send out the slides. Afterwards, you can get the link right there and click and then check. And when you go through, I'm not endorsed by 16 personalities or anything, but when you take it, they also provide some other links if you're curious on like your personality type and what might be a good career choice for you. They provide that as well. Cool. Let's see. Awesome. Very cool. So now to actually get into like what a day in the life actually might look like, say if you're, an analyst here. So again, this is not at all an, exclusive list. This is what my day might look like. So after I've, gotten the coffee going and all that fun stuff, fire up the laptop and see what's going on, take a look at the day. And usually involves a mix of like collaborating with, internal, external stakeholders, right? Cross-functional teams. Realistically, it might be someone saying, hey, Josh, can we pull a report that pulls in these clients and et cetera? Or the clients that we have are like, hey, we need a report. We have this new advertiser who's launching and they need a new report that looks at these 3 marketing channels, right? A lot of going back and forth, a lot of the job is relying on those communication skills to really figure out what's the ask, what are we supposed to do, what kind of report are we building? And then, the fun part then after that is building out the report. So that would revolve, around like the data analysis. So the various tools and platforms that you'll use, so we use, my tool belt's pretty big with like the data analysis, analytics and stuff that I use. I'll show you a couple of like where to get started if you're curious on what to take a look at. So analyzing the data, right, and then visualizing the data if that's what we need to do, right? So creating a report or a dashboard, and then presenting it. So then saying, here's the dashboard, here's what we built, here's what we're finding, and then the back and forth, does this make sense? Do we need to adjust it, et cetera? And then delivering it from there. Usually like a cadence wise for that, like depending on who you're working with, there's like monthly reports, quarterly reports. It's kind of, how the analyst works. Sometimes you have someone who wants like a weekly report, et cetera. And then, when things are maybe slowed down a little bit, continuous learning. So like I'm always firing up, courses I have or YouTube videos. So some of the recommendations I have are from like Udemy, Coursera, Free Code Camp, Code Academy, if you're interested. Some of these courses, they're either like Free Code Academy, they're free. You can, Udemy or Coursera, you can find sales sometimes for $10 for a course that can, teach you exactly what you need. At the end, you get a nice certificate, throw it on LinkedIn, and it's only going to help you. But that's where I find myself doing, or even after, the workday is done, if I have a slower day, slower week, I'm usually trying to just always be learning because it only helps. So maybe some sample tasks and projects like to extrapolate on what, the day in the life might be. Here's what you might be required to do, right? So building out a dashboard, right? You might have a client who said, hey, we're launching. So if you're familiar at all with like, a web analytics or digital marketing, Google Analytics 4 is launching next month, which has kind of thrown a lot of the digital marketing world into a little bit of a spin. They're changing up a tool that they've had, a pretty reliable one for years. So building out new dashboards, right, for Google Analytics 4, that's an ask we're getting quite a bit, right? Or then analyzing the data, coming to conclusions from that, right? So building out dashboards, right? That's going to be something you use. And this is one from Looker Studio that I built. Pulling the data, right? There might be a request that you come through and says, hey, Josh, we need to pull all of our customers from Germany. We're launching a new German ad, a newsletter that's going out, right? So this is, just a very, very simple SQL statement, right? And probably, if you're going to be doing this as an analyst, they're probably going to be a little more complex than this, but you can see like, sometimes there might not be a report that answers your question. The only tool you might have at your disposal will be something like a SQL or a tool that's just used for pulling the data. And then coming to start there, then you can start from here, then start extrapolating, start building out reports from your findings here. KPI analysis. So being like a marketing analyst, this is very much what I do. So looking at reports and saying, hey, for example, conversions are up almost 60% month over month. Sessions are up. Like, first off, cool, that's great. But is there a reason why, right? Or if it was the inverse, hey, conversions are down, what's going on, right? So then digging in and figuring out, why is it down? Is there something that we can control? And if so, what is that? And then what's the proposed solution? So depending on your role, you're going to have whatever KPIs that you look at. But digging into, the up or down, like saying, great, sessions are up. Oh yeah, we launched the new website last month, and we had a bunch of buzz, or social media was feeding in, et cetera. That's the decisions that you're going to want to, like, as simple or as complex as that might be, that higher ups are going to want to know. Or if you're having a client, call and you're going over findings, that's what they're going to want to see, is like, yes, this is up. Can you tell me why? If they don't know offhand, that's going to just set you up to be, be a great analyst there. So question, did you use Looker Studio? Yep. So it's a free tool. I'll go into that here in a couple slides. I'll actually show you how simple it is to create a dashboard, if you want. And it's all free. So Looker Studio is a tool that Google owns. It was previously Data Studio, but Google acquired the data analysis tool Looker, and then they rebranded it to Looker. Their Data Studio is Looker Studio. It's confusing, but a free tool, and I can show you a little bit more of what that looks like here coming up. So some of the key challenges for analysts and how to overcome them. I'd say one of the major changes or challenges that we have is the changing business landscape. So new business models and changes are happening all the time, and trying to stay ahead of that can be overwhelming, right? There's new tools, there's new ways of looking at data. There's a new, data analyst company. There's a new whatever. Google acquired this. There's a lot. So like really trying to stay, ahead of these trends. Encourage you to check out different like newsletters, like, say like I work in the digital marketing realm. So there's different digital marketing newsletters and publications I'll follow. There's different subreddits. There might be, different people you follow on social media. Like finding out those people and following them and the updates is really going to help you. Another challenge that we face is data quality and availability. You could receive an awesome set of data from your clients. That's everything you need. It's great. Or it might be, I don't know, here's an API that we have and it doesn't really work right. And I don't know why we have it, but it's the best we have. Can you create a report off of it? Or like, I don't know who owns the data. That guy quit 3 months ago and we can't get what we need. So there are challenges, and really the best that you think you can do as an analyst is make sure you're using the newest data, the most available, and really the best to answer all your questions. Another challenge we face, and this is more with our stakeholders, is the resistance to change, right? You might pull a report for, your executive and say, hey, look it, we need to be investing in popsicles, right? That might not be your business model now, but the data is showing that we need to invest in popsicles if we want to actually make some money. Maybe your CEO is like, we're never going to invest in popsicles. But having the data to prove it, and there might be that resistance to change. And it's not going to be as silly as trying to sell popsicles, but, ensuring that you have the data to back up and the story, you're going to tell through your visualization. That's doing the best that you can, right? And making sure that your voice is heard, because there can be a difficulty to buy in, especially if you're creating or proposing a change that's different than the status quo. Which you'll see a lot as an analyst, that the data tells a different story than maybe what your preconceived notions of whatever subject might be. And one of the biggest challenges that we face, and this is not just for analysts, but anyone working in any sort of digital landscape, the project timelines and priorities, they're shifting all the time. Trying to allocate all the proper developer allocations can be tough, right? Projects get moved, resources get changed from one team to another, et cetera. Or a project you think is going to take a week might take 6 months. So pushing things back, and it's just part of the role. And again, that comes back to having that agile mindset of being able to go with the flow helps. I also recommend utilizing tools like, there's one called Trello, which is like, I believe it's still free. It's a great project management tool for you to use to just lay out maybe what your day, week, month, quarter looks like, have projects and track. You can invite team members to check it out from there. A lot of companies use Jira, which is like a ticketing software. So being an analyst, you might be receiving tickets from clients or from, internal teams that say, hey, can you build out a dashboard? Or, hey, whatever, we need this cleaned up, or our data warehousing needs to be changed, whatever it is. Receiving tickets, being able to track time and all that stuff definitely helps, because you can then say, hey, here's what I have. I don't know if we have the time to do this new project, etc. Someone who's me, like, having ADHD and trying to be an analyst, I need to rely on my own tools like this to help me just make sure my day looks right, and my week, quarter, etc. It's only going to help, because these timelines, a lot of stuff that's out of our hands in the industry, making sure that you're set for success is the best you can do. Okay, sorry, gonna jump into questions here. You mentioned digging for the why. How do you do this? So that it depends on the data really that you're looking at, and if you're making, say, if you're creating like a new proposal to someone on like the why, being able to tell the data, like using the data best you can to tell that. Do you speak with points of contact, or do you have an in-depth knowledge of the information that helps you analyze the data? So it depends. Usually it's a little bit of both. I working as, like, say if you were to get a job as an analyst at an agency, you're probably gonna do a little bit of both. You're gonna have your points of contact that might be your client point of contact, and you might have someone internally, like some sort of, perhaps developer or engineer who can help with some of the behind the scene things. Or you might not necessarily know all the in-depth information. You might have to, don't be afraid to ask. I always ask questions. I think it just helps me learn, helps me understand better. Say if you're receiving data from a client, it's like, well, what is this? What are we looking at here? And ultimately, like, asking questions from the get-go, if you have a point of contact with any sort of data or any sort of ask, really, it's like, what's the goal? What do we need to see here? Or what do we need to do? Is it to, usually it's to help better with our resource spend or allocation, or we need to clean up our campaigns for digital marketing, right? But knowing the ask from the get-go, especially from having a point of contact, and then you'll start to learn with the data sets, if you're getting more familiar with them, or if they give you a really good, well-formatted data set already, you're going to be able to start to look at the data and then see from the get-go, oh, this makes sense. I think I'm starting to have an in-depth knowledge, and then just based on your overall, like, once you're working more and more in the industry, you'll start seeing more trends across different data sets, and you'll start to become an expert just at looking at data and digging through. What financial accounting software do you feel is most intuitive when it comes to extraction of data for your analysis software? What's easiest to work with? So Gina, personally, I haven't worked so much with accounting. I know clients I've worked with before have used like QuickBooks, and then using the QuickBooks combined with maybe some sort of data analysis, like a Looker. Looker is a paid business intelligence tool, but that can pull in data from QuickBooks and then start to build out reports from there, depending on what you're looking at. That can be a combination of like QuickBooks, Looker, and BigQuery, which are both Google products. Or depending on how you extract the data, if you want to extract it, via like Excel, you can do some stuff within Excel, or even pulling that into a Looker Studio report, which I'll show you what I've done here. So hopefully that answers, the questions there. Good questions. Thank you, everybody. That's good stuff. Cool. So some tools of the trade. So say if you were to say, okay, Josh, cool, I'm interested in maybe learning more about what it takes to be an analyst, or what are some of the tools that you use? Maybe some of your, like, old reliable, right? Like what would those be? So here are some you might use as a business analyst. So for data visualization, so I mentioned Looker Studio. Looker Studio, it's a free tool. It's a lot of times the quick and dirty option, but it gets it done. It can build a nice looking report. A lot of businesses use this free tool, and it's great. Power BI is one that Power BI and Tableau are ones that you might see on job listings for like experience with, or you might have even heard of these. Outside of Looker, these are some of the big dashboarding platforms and reporting platforms. They make data visualization really easy. It's harder to learn on these platforms unless you have, like, you buy a course that can do that, or you have an employer who has an access key for you to use those. It's hard to learn these tools. So that's why I recommend maybe starting with Looker Studio. It's free, pretty easy to get into. If you're interested at all in learning like SQL and even some basic SQL or SQL, highly recommend that. That's, I use basic SQL quite a bit, just for like answering questions, checking to see if data is correct, when I'm pulling a bunch of data. So there's tools like MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Postgres. So there's also courses on there if you want to learn a little bit more about like what is SQL. If you're interested, you don't want to download any of the tools or don't even know where to start, Free Code Camp has a great resource on SQL. You can run everything right through your browser. You don't have to download anything. It's pretty nice. And then it felt weird to have Excel as its own column, but Excel is huge. I rely on Excel all the time because it's like the tried and true. It's what most companies, if you're exporting any sort of data, it's going to come to you in a CSV or a basic Excel spreadsheet. That's what it's going to be. And being able to, if you really need to lean on like your visualization within Excel or pivot out some data, then build it out from there. Excel is a great tool to use. Nothing wrong with that. Most businesses, of any size, rely on Excel in some way or another. And again, this is not an exclusive list. You're probably going to learn a ton of other tools, use your own stuff. But if you're looking for a good place to start, I'd recommend some of these. I love Excel. That's good because I don't think most people do. So if you can go into an interview and say, I love Excel, I'm the Excel wizard, give it to me, that's just great because most people are going to say, oh yeah, I know how to use it. Cool. Love Excel. All right, some Excel fans in here. Great. So how long would you say it takes the basics of SQL, how to get that down? It depends on like how many hours, I guess, per week you have to learn. The basics you could probably get in a couple weeks, essentially you're learning the structure of how SQL works, and it's creating different queries on the data set. So once you learn what some of the nomenclature is for SQL, and you can start to understand, okay, there's different, keywords I put in here, the kind of the world is your oyster. So I'd say maybe a couple weeks to learn really the basics and enough to get dangerous to then start, looking at bigger data sets. There's a lot of free data sets out there for you if you're interested in taking a look at those and querying some of those, and then if you do any of those courses that I mentioned or anything else you find, even stuff on YouTube, they're going to have links to different data sets that you can use in your tests. So we're going to go to a live demo here and just kind of show you through Looker Studio and this is a very easy just example of kind of like what an ask might look like and how to quickly use a visualization tool to not only get the answers we need from a spreadsheet, but also maybe tell the story, right? So the ask here is leadership. It wants us to find some new target audiences for our Corellian contacts, or contacts that will enhance the user's eye color, right? And for any Star Wars fans out there, I'm using a Star Wars data set for this. It's one I found. So some recommendations or some requirements: we can't target droids. They don't have eyeballs for the contacts. We want to look for prominent features among planets and maybe the genders of our audiences that we want to look at. And they want us to create 2 target audiences. So to go over in here, let's open up, don't tap. So like I mentioned, Looker Studio, you go to lookerstudio.google.com. It's going to give you a reporting suite that looks similar to this. And if you've never done anything, it's going to give you a little bit of a walkthrough first. Let's say if we want to start just a basic new report, you can see here, the first option we have is blank report. So I'm going to click on my blank report. And then what we're going to see here is, since it's a Google product, we're going to be greeted with a bunch of different, we call these data sources, right, or connectors to pull in your data. So if you're in any sort of digital marketing role, you're going to say, oh, analytics, Google Ads, I can start reporting Campaign Manager 360. If you have connections to those Google accounts already, you can easily pull that data in. For this one, we're going to use this Google Sheet. So this is an ask you might get quite a bit is, hey, here's my CSV. Can you make a report from it? So I already hooked it up via Google Sheets. I just hooked it into my my Drive on the Google Sheet here, but we're going to select Google Sheets. We're going to go to our Star Wars data set, and we're going to go to our characters, and then we're going to hit add. So then once Google's done pulling that in, it's going to start, it creates a visualization for us. It's a table, pretty, standard, doesn't really tell us much. It's just something, right? Here's our table. So I'm actually going to get rid of this. And you can see here, here's all the data that we brought in from our spreadsheet. So we have, from our characters, we have the birth year, eye color, gender, hair color, height, skin color, species, their home world, etc. So what we can do is if we want to start to actually add in some visualizations, you can see here we want to add in a chart. We're going to add in a bar chart here. And you can see within this tool a couple different columns here. Actually, I'm going to take this data column out so we have a little bit more landscape to play with. Instead of in the name here for our visualization, what I want to do is pull in our eye color. So we want to target people. We want to find new audiences based on eye color. See at a glance, oh, great. The brown eye colored folks are the majority here. To make this easier, go to styling. You can show the data labels. We can just see, boom. So now we can see, great. We want to create target audiences off of that. But if we want to just target, all the brown-eyed, we don't know what the split is, like what our audience might be. We want to be pretty specific. The more specific we can be with our advertising efforts and audiences, the better. So we can actually change this chart type over to a stacked chart. And instead of this hair color, I'm going to switch over to our gender. So we can quickly see at a glance here, okay, our brown-eyed, audience, there's 16 of those male and 5 female. So if we want to, great, let's start targeting the males with brown eyes. That's a good, brown eyes being the majority, great. If we want to take it a step further, what we can also do is create another chart element here. You can just copy and paste these if you'd like. And we also want to say, well, where, the world of Star Wars, we have a large galaxy at our disposal. Where do we want to actually target these folks? So we can switch this up to homeworld on this new chart here. So you can see we have our audiences. And if you click on these brown-eyed males, you can see, oh, great. They're on these 2 planets here, Naboo and Alderaan. Great. Let's create an advertising, audience that targets on these 2 planets for brown-eyed males. That's going to be our best chance, right, at capturing the largest audience. Now, do we want to do brown-eyed for our females? No, we actually see we have a larger audience for females, for our blue-eyed. So we can click that. If you click it, it actually filters everything down here on your report. So you can see, oh, okay, great. So 2 on Coruscant and 2 on Muriel. So this is a very basic example. You can see then you could take these findings into higher ups and say, hey, look at the best chance we have of selling to 2 different audiences, male and female. We want to target blue-eyed females on these 2 planets, and then we want to target brown-eyed males on these 2 planets. We're going to skip the NA because we don't know where these folks live, right? So taking data like that, and then obviously just in the essence of time, I don't want to spend too much on creating a report that would fully tell the story, but you can see where I'm going with this is you're able to quickly pull in data that would otherwise just look like a spreadsheet that came through. You can quickly find answers that you'd need to say, hey, maybe we should target this audience, and giving that to the higher ups and say, we think this is going to be our best chance at, making some money off of these contacts there. Cool. I will go back here. See any questions? Are analysts responsible for addressing and managing data security, particularly when working with client data? So Robin, that's a good question. And it really depends on the industry and the role. Yes. So data security, is something that is important, and with, the laws that were happening specifically over in the UK, more data security laws are happening now. It is on us. Say if you're working, as an analyst and you're working with specific data sets and you might not be privy to certain data, or other analysts or people in the company might, that it's on you to a certain, extent, right? Or working with third parties and make sure that there's consent managers and things like that. Gina, how are you getting such specific details? Are you relying on the original data entry from the client? Yes. So that's a good question. That kind of goes back to the optimizations and the recommendations that you get are only going to be as good as your data, right? So I received, for that one is just a data set of just characters and some of their details, right? And that was the data set we had. So you might not be able to get in depth, or you might be able to get even more in depth and be able to say, if you're using specific, like a Google Ads or Google Analytics, you can get pretty specific with your targeting down to a zip code, right? Or a city-based targeting for these audiences that you build out. So your insights are only going to be good as the data you have. So that kind of goes back to some of the challenges that you might face as an analyst is we can only do so much, right, with the data that we have. Or you might be able, the world might be your oyster if you have a, you know, a data set. It just kind of depends on what we have and what we are able to go with from there. Good questions. Cool. So really what I'd like to end here is like a career development. So like where I start, if I were you, right, and you're interested in the analyst role or the world of becoming, you know, business analyst. So if you're just starting out, I'd say look for internships or entry level like analyst type jobs. This is really going to provide you with enough real world experience, needed to advance, and enough to say, hey, I love this, or wow, I don't want to be an analyst. You're going to get that a lot from your entry level role. And then from there, I'd say, you know, if you wanted to, you know, double down into a specific industry or niche. So for me, like I chose digital marketing, right? But there's finance, healthcare, technology. There's a lot of different type of analyst specific roles out there, and finding the one that you might want to be, or otherwise there's just, you know, there is a standard business analyst that you know, it's a pretty standard role, nothing wrong with that. And that might be what you want to do, or find the industry you want to focus on. Start to look at your data analyst jobs. So this would be the next step up, and this would be, you'd start having more responsibility, more experience around data visualization, manipulating the data analysis and things like that. And then if you're taking it a step further and you want to go more towards like the engineering or the science or even just more coding heavy route, start looking at more of the BI analyst or business intelligence analyst roles. This is going to be, you're going to rely heavily on tools, technology. That's really going to help you more of the behind the scenes stuff. You're going to be able to pull more in-depth reports, analysis, and work with either your other analysts or your you know, account managers to then come to conclusions from there. And then really, if desired, shoot for becoming like a consultant or working like at an agency level where you're going to be working across a myriad of industries and different technologies and different clients. That's really going to give you all the experience that you're going to want to see, and then you can create different opportunities. You make great contacts, and just solving all the different situations that might come up as an analyst. And then there's always the choice for higher education as well. You know, so master's is going to help you provide deeper understanding and really help you claim some more of those senior level roles that you might see out there. Cool. All right, I talked enough. Any questions for the last couple minutes that we have here? Question, does business analysts do voice calling or customer service representatives? So with like the analyst role, you are kind of not necessarily like customer service, I guess, depending on your type of role and where, you know, if you're in like more of an agency type role, you might be dealing with customers, you know, so that you're going to have some customer service you know, customer service skills, you know, but a lot of the times when I'm meeting with clients, it's on voice, you know, voice calls like this or video calls, you know, such as this. Hopefully that answers the question. Cool. If there's any other questions, feel free to chime in, or if you want, shoot me an email. So my email is here. It's jpedivello@kortx.io. I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to talk anything business analyst data, or, you know, you got a new recipe you want to share, great, send it over. Thank you for your time. Definitely appreciate it. I will stop the share, and yeah, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, take care, and I'll talk with you all soon.
All right, and thanks for sharing, Josh. Just wanted to let everybody know this presentation is recorded, so we will be sending this information out to you, as well as posting it on the Walsh Career Services events page. So if you have a lot of information on here that you want to go back to, we'll have that information out so you can rewatch this presentation. All right, and with that, everybody have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.